7-foot Apache woman said no man could handle a woman her size, until a quiet cowboy proved her wrong. From the moment she was born, people noticed she was different. Her family loved her dearly, but even in their small Apache community, she grew faster and taller than anyone could remember. By the time she was a little girl, she could reach shelves that adults struggled to touch. Her hands were strong, her legs long, and her presence seemed to fill the room. While other children played quietly, she often played with older kids or even helped adults with heavy chores, not because she had to, but because it was natural for her. People whispered when they saw her, sometimes in admiration, sometimes in fear. They had never seen a girl grow so tall, so strong, so unstoppable. But as much as she loved herself, she could sense that others did not always feel the same. Growing up, she enjoyed her strength. She could run faster, climb higher, and carry heavier things than anyone her age. She loved feeling powerful, like she could take on the world. But she soon realized that being different came with challenges she had not expected. Boys her age and even men seemed unsure how to act around her. When she laughed or tried to talk to them, they would often look away or make awkward jokes. She didn't understand it at first. She wasn't trying to scare anyone, she was just herself. But as she got older, she saw that her size made people uncomfortable. Men who were confident with other women suddenly felt nervous when she smiled at them. Some even avoided her completely. Her family tried to explain it gently. "People are afraid of what they don't understand," they said. She listened, but it was hard not to feel lonely. She saw other girls getting attention, friends finding partners, and even her own cousins falling in love while she stood on the sidelines. At first, she thought maybe it was just bad luck, but as years passed, she began to notice a pattern. No matter how kind, smart, or funny she was, men seemed hesitant to approach her. Some admired her from afar. Some even told her she was beautiful. But when it came to real connection, something always stopped them. By the time she reached her late teens, she had grown to nearly 7 feet tall. Her height became the defining part of her life, at least in the eyes of others. Strangers stared, friends whispered, and suitors disappeared. She began to accept a truth that hurt deeply. Many men were not ready for a woman like her. She did not blame them entirely. Society had expectations of how women should look and act, and she did not fit any of those molds. But the pain of being rejected over something she could not change, over something that was a gift as much as it was a challenge, weighed on her heart. Determined not to let disappointment shape her, she embraced her uniqueness. She learned to work with her strength rather than hiding it. She could chop wood faster than any man in her community, run across fields that left others breathless, and lift objects that seemed impossible. Children admired her, women looked up to her, and some men even respected her. But respect was not the same as love. She wanted more than admiration. She wanted someone who could see her heart, her dreams, and her fears, not just her size. She wanted someone who could be a partner, someone who could match her in spirit, if not in height. She began to speak openly about it, almost as a warning and almost as a shield. "No man could ever handle a woman my size," she would tell anyone who listened. She did not say it to boast or to scare men away, though it did both. It was a truth she had learned through experience. She had seen too many try and fail, too many give up, too many walk away. In her eyes, love seemed impossible, at least in the way most people understood it. Her words spread, first through her community, then through nearby towns. People began to whisper about the tall Apache woman who claimed no man could handle her. Some were curious, some laughed, some thought she was proud and unkind. But most were respectful or cautious, afraid of the truth in her words. She spent her days in a careful rhythm. Mornings were for helping her family with chores, afternoons for practicing skills that kept her strong and confident, and evenings for quiet reflection. She would sometimes sit by the river, watching the water flow, thinking about the life she might have if someone could see past her height. She imagined holding hands, sharing stories, laughing without fear, and feeling a partner beside her who was not intimidated. The dream seemed distant, almost impossible, but she refused to let it fade completely. Friends tried to help. They would introduce her to men who they thought were strong enough or different enough to handle her. But almost every meeting ended the same way. The men would look up at her, smile nervously, and then excuse themselves politely, often finding any reason to leave. It was humiliating at times and frustrating at others. She began to notice a pattern in people's behavior that hurt more than words ever could. People admired her physically, but feared her presence emotionally. They could not imagine sharing life with someone who demanded equality, respect, and strength in equal measure. And so she built walls around her heart, telling herself that love, as others experienced it, was not for her. Yet, despite the repeated disappointments, she never lost her sense of humor or her warmth. Children loved her energy and strength, and elders in the community often sought her opinion on practical matters because she combined wisdom with courage. She became a quiet leader, someone people could rely on, even if they could not understand her completely. And though she claimed no man could handle her, deep down, she still wondered if the right one might exist. Somewhere, she thought, there could be a man who would see her for herself and not just her height. Her reputation became a mix of legend and cautionary tale. Stories about her traveled from village to village. People would whisper about the giant Apache woman who could lift more than any man, run faster than any boy, and had a heart larger than her body. But most of these stories ended with a warning. No man could ever handle her. For her, it was both a statement of fact and a challenge to the world. She was proud, but she was also waiting, perhaps unconsciously, for someone who could prove her wrong, not by showing off strength, but by showing understanding, patience, and quiet confidence. Life continued, as life always does. She worked hard, trained herself, and lived fully, never allowing rejection to make her bitter. Yet at night, when the stars shone over the desert sky, she would sometimes dream about companionship, about someone standing beside her not out of obligation, but out of choice. She imagined conversations that lasted for hours, shared laughter, and moments of quiet understanding that only true connection could bring. The dream was fragile but persistent, a small flame that refused to die. Her story, even in this early part of her life, was not just about size or strength. It was about resilience, self-respect, and the quiet hope that the world might one day recognize her fully. She had learned to value herself, to embrace her differences, and to live boldly. And even though she had declared that no man could handle a woman like her, she also understood, deep inside, that this was both a shield and a question. Was there truly no one out there who could walk beside her, heart to heart, without fear? And so she waited, not passively, but with a readiness that only someone who has faced rejection and continued to rise could have. She trained her body, nurtured her mind, and protected her heart, knowing that life might bring surprises. The tall Apache woman, who had been underestimated, overlooked, and sometimes feared, was preparing for the moment someone might see her as more than her size. Someone might see her strength as a gift rather than a challenge. And while the world whispered that no man could handle her, she quietly wondered if perhaps, somewhere out there, the impossible could happen. The arrival of the cowboy was quiet. He didn't ride into town with a crowd or make a show of his presence. Instead, he appeared on the outskirts, a simple man with calm eyes and steady hands. People noticed him immediately because he was different from anyone they had seen before. There was no loud laughter, no boastful stories, no need to impress anyone. He walked with ease, his movements measured and calm, as though he belonged to the rhythm of the land itself. When he first saw the tall Apache woman, he did not gasp or stumble back. He did not whisper to the townspeople or make awkward jokes. He simply nodded politely and continued about his business. The woman noticed him, of course. At first, she watched quietly from a distance. She had seen many men come and go, many who stared at her out of fear or curiosity, and many who tried to show off, only to vanish when she met their gaze. But there was something different about him. He did not seem intimidated by her height or her presence. He did not act as if he had to prove anything. He simply existed calmly, without judgment, without fear. She found herself curious, a feeling she had not experienced in a long time. Curiosity led to attention, and attention led to a cautious interest. The first real conversation between them was short and awkward, but it carried honesty that she had not felt before. She had expected a man to comment on her size, to make a joke, or perhaps to retreat in fear. But he simply asked her name and listened when she answered. He asked her about her work, her family, and her life without judgment. He did not shy away from her, nor did he treat her differently. For the first time, she felt as if she was being seen as a person, not as a challenge or a story to be whispered about. This feeling, strange and unfamiliar, caused her heart to stir in a way she hadn't felt in years. Over the following weeks, their interactions became more frequent. The cowboy would stop by while she worked in the fields or carried out her daily chores. He never offered unnecessary praise, nor did he attempt to dominate her space. Instead, he worked alongside her when he could, carried supplies when they were heavy, and shared small stories from his own life. He spoke simply about the land, the weather, and the routines of daily life. But in his simplicity, there was depth. He spoke as someone who had faced hardship, as someone who had learned to remain steady even when the world tried to shake him. The townspeople were curious and sometimes skeptical. They whispered about the pairing, wondering how a quiet cowboy could be attracted to a woman of such imposing stature. Some even tried to warn her, speaking behind her back, suggesting that he might not be ready for a woman like her. But she had already noticed something the others had not. He was consistent. He did not change his behavior depending on the audience. He did not pretend to be stronger than he was or try to impress her. His actions were steady and quiet, and that steadiness began to make a deep impression on her. She started to notice small things that showed his character. When he visited her family, he treated everyone with respect. He listened to the elders without interruption, helped the children with small tasks, and never acted as if he were superior to anyone. He did not make fun of her size or strength, nor did he shy away from tasks that might seem challenging. When they worked together, he never complained, even when things were difficult or tiring. It was this quiet resilience, more than anything else, that began to shift something inside her. For the first time, she felt that someone might truly understand the balance of strength and kindness she had always sought. Their friendship grew slowly, as all meaningful relationships do. They shared long walks along the river, sitting on rocks and talking about things that mattered. The cowboy never rushed her or pressured her to reveal her feelings. He simply shared his thoughts and listened to hers. They spoke about dreams, fears, and small victories of daily life. She began to realize that true connection was not about grand gestures or heroic displays. It was about consistency, respect, and understanding. His calm demeanor, patience, and willingness to meet her as an equal began to break down the walls she had built around her heart. People around them began to notice subtle changes in her. She laughed more freely, smiled more openly, and seemed lighter in spirit. It was not that the cowboy did anything extraordinary. He simply allowed her to be herself. He never challenged her strength, never belittled her accomplishments, and never made her feel like she needed to shrink to fit the expectations of others. This acceptance, simple yet profound, was more powerful than anything she had experienced before. Slowly, she started to question the truth of her own statement, that no man could ever handle a woman her size. There were moments of doubt, of course. Sometimes she would catch him glancing at her in a way that made her nervous, and she would remind herself of past failures. She had been hurt before, and caution had been her shield. But each time he proved her doubts wrong, not by words but by actions. He never forced closeness, never demanded her trust, and never allowed fear or judgment to enter their growing bond. In these small, quiet ways, he demonstrated a strength that was different from what she had expected. Not physical, not loud, not visible to the eyes of others, but steady, unwavering, and genuine. One day, while walking through a field after helping her with chores, she noticed the way he moved with ease and care. He did not rush, he did not push, he did not act as if he needed to control the situation. He simply walked beside her, matching her pace, respecting her space. For a moment, she felt an unfamiliar emotion, comfort. Comfort with someone who neither feared her nor tried to change her. Comfort with someone who was quietly strong, who could carry his own burdens while standing beside hers. And in that comfort, a tiny flame of hope began to grow, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, someone could indeed handle a woman like her. The more time they spent together, the more she realized that true strength was not about size, loudness, or dominance. It was about understanding, patience, and the ability to remain steady in the face of life's challenges. The cowboy's calmness, his willingness to work alongside her without judgment, and his respect for her independence began to redefine her understanding of what it meant to be handled. For years, she had assumed that no man could handle her because she equated handling with control, dominance, or superficial attention. Now she began to see that handling someone could mean simply standing beside them, supporting them, and respecting their individuality. Her curiosity about him grew into admiration, but not the kind born from infatuation or desire. It was admiration for his character, his patience, and his ability to treat her as an equal. She noticed how he listened more than he spoke, how he helped without expectation, and how he maintained his integrity even when others doubted him. In this quiet companionship, she began to feel something she had not allowed herself to feel for many years. The possibility of love, not as a challenge to her strength, but as a shared journey of mutual respect and understanding. The town continued to watch and whisper, but their opinions mattered less and less. The woman had learned to trust her own judgment and instincts. She understood that admiration from strangers or approval from peers could never replace the feeling of being truly understood. And in the quiet cowboy, she found someone who offered understanding, patience, and respect in abundance. Their bond, though still fragile and unspoken in certain ways, began to show the world that strength could take many forms. It was not always loud or visible. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and enduring. There were challenges, of course. Life in their town was not always easy, and some people remained skeptical of their connection. But every challenge the cowboy met with calmness, humility, and quiet resilience. He never allowed gossip to shake his confidence, and he never pressured her to conform to expectations. Together, they navigated daily life with cooperation and respect. She began to feel a sense of peace she had never known, a quiet certainty that she might have finally found someone who could walk beside her, not in fear, but in partnership. By the end of the season, the woman began to see that the quiet cowboy had changed her perception of relationships entirely. He had not tried to prove that he could handle her. He had simply shown her that he already could by being himself. She realized that true strength, both in men and women, was not measured by size, loudness, or outward bravado, but by patience, respect, and integrity. For the first time, she felt that her long-held belief, that no man could handle a woman her size, might not be absolute. She began to allow herself a quiet hope that the impossible could be possible, that someone could meet her heart without fear, without pretense, and without judgment. And so, life moved forward. The tall Apache woman and the quiet cowboy continued their days together, side by side, building a connection that was simple in appearance but profound in meaning. They worked, laughed, and shared small moments of joy and understanding. Their bond grew slowly, naturally, and steadily, like a river carving its path through the land. It was a bond that showed her, in ways she had never expected, that strength could be gentle, love could be patient, and the man who could handle her might already be standing quietly by her side. Time passed, and the bond between the tall Apache woman and the quiet cowboy grew. Deeper, stronger, and more meaningful. It was no longer just curiosity or admiration that connected them. It was trust, understanding, and a shared rhythm of life. They had learned to rely on each other in ways that went beyond words. While many people in the town still whispered about their unlikely friendship, the two of them knew that what they shared was real. It was quiet, steady, and unshakable. They did not need anyone's approval. What mattered most was the respect and care they offered each other every single day. The woman began to notice something she had never fully appreciated before. Strength could exist in many forms. She had always thought that strength meant towering over others, lifting heavy objects, or moving with unmatched speed and power. But the cowboy showed her a different kind of strength, one that came from the heart, from patience, and from consistency. He did not need to prove anything with grand gestures or loud declarations. His strength was quiet, invisible to those who judged only by appearances, yet it was more powerful than she had ever encountered. One morning, after a long day of helping her with chores and repairing parts of the homestead, the woman paused to catch her breath. She looked at him and realized how much she had come to depend on his calm presence. He never demanded attention, yet she found herself noticing every small detail about him. The way he carried tools, the gentle care in his movements, the quiet way he encouraged her without ever diminishing her own abilities. In that moment, she understood that the cowboy's strength was not about controlling the world. It was about being steady, reliable, and true. Their friendship slowly blossomed into something deeper. They spent hours together, talking about life, sharing stories, and learning from each other. She told him about her childhood, the loneliness she had endured, and the times when she felt that no man could handle her. He listened without judgment, never interrupting, never offering quick solutions, only understanding. And in return, he shared pieces of his own life, hardships he had faced, lessons he had learned, and the quiet values he held dear. Through these conversations, they began to build a foundation that was unshakable, a bond that would carry them through the challenges ahead. One day, while walking through the nearby fields, they came across a young boy struggling to carry a heavy basket of firewood. Without hesitation, the cowboy stepped forward to help, but the woman moved faster, lifting the basket herself and handing it to him with a smile. The boy looked up in awe, then glanced at the cowboy, expecting some loud comment or show of strength. Instead, the cowboy simply nodded and smiled gently, showing admiration without envy. That small moment captured everything about their dynamic, mutual respect, quiet strength, and the understanding that real power often came from supporting each other, not competing. Life was not without its challenges. Some townspeople still whispered, and a few even questioned whether the cowboy was truly able to handle someone of her size and spirit. But the woman had learned over the years to trust her instincts. She no longer needed the approval of others. She had spent a lifetime building walls around her heart to protect herself from disappointment. But with him, those walls began to crumble, not because he forced them down, but because he never attempted to control her. He simply stood beside her, steady and unwavering, showing through his actions that he was more than capable of walking through life with her, hand in hand. As the seasons changed, they faced new challenges together. Harsh winds swept across the plains, storms threatened their crops, and difficult tasks tested their endurance. Yet through it all, the cowboy remained calm, methodical, and steadfast. He did not complain, he did not seek recognition, and he never allowed hardship to overshadow his care for her. In these moments, the woman began to see clearly what she had been missing in past relationships. Someone who could remain strong without needing to dominate, someone who could support without trying to take control, someone who could be a partner in the truest sense. She began to reflect on her past experiences, remembering the many men who had tried and failed to connect with her. Most had been intimidated by her size, some had mocked her, and others had simply walked away. None had offered the understanding, patience, and respect that the cowboy provided effortlessly. She realized that her statement, "No man could handle a woman my size," was not entirely wrong, but it had been incomplete. She had been thinking only in terms of physical strength or traditional ideas of masculinity. Now she understood that true handling, true partnership, was about empathy, patience, and quiet courage, the kind of courage that the cowboy displayed every day. One afternoon, while sitting together by the river, she spoke for the first time about her fear of being misunderstood. She told him about the loneliness she had felt, the pain of rejection, and the times when she believed that no man could ever love her for who she truly was. He listened carefully without interrupting, and when she finished, he spoke softly, "I don't need to handle you, I just need to stand with you." Those words, simple as they were, struck her deeply. It was not a promise to change her or tame her. It was a promise to support her as she was. For the first time, she felt completely seen, completely accepted, and completely safe. Their relationship continued to grow, not in dramatic bursts, but in steady, meaningful steps. They worked together on daily tasks, shared meals, and laughed over small jokes and stories. She began to notice how much she valued his presence, not because he was extraordinary in the eyes of others, but because he was extraordinary to her. She felt lighter, freer, and more confident. For years, she had carried the weight of rejection and loneliness, but with him, those burdens seemed easier to bear. His strength became a mirror for her own, showing her that she did not have to shrink to make room for love, and that someone could meet her heart without fear. Challenges from outsiders occasionally arose. Some people continued to question their relationship, offering advice or warnings. But the woman no longer felt the need to defend herself or explain their bond. The cowboy never reacted to criticism with anger or defensiveness. Instead, he remained calm, patient, and unwavering in his support. Through his quiet actions, he taught her that strength was not about confrontation or proving oneself to others. It was about living with integrity, honesty, and respect. This lesson was more powerful than any words she had ever heard or spoken. Over time, she began to see how much she had changed. She laughed more easily, trusted more freely, and allowed herself to hope. She realized that the man who could truly handle her was not one who tried to dominate, impress, or control, but one who simply stood beside her in love and respect. The cowboy had shown her that partnership was not about strength measured in size or volume, but about consistency, understanding, and quiet courage. In his presence, she had learned to believe in the possibility of love again, not as a challenge to her strength, but as a shared journey that honored both of them equally. There were moments of joy that seemed small but were profound. Simple walks through the fields, sharing water after a long day, or watching the sunset together became treasured rituals. She began to notice how much she relied on his calm presence and how much she valued the subtle ways he showed care. No grand gestures, no declarations, just steady, unwavering companionship. In these moments, she realized that true love and partnership could be quiet, consistent, and deeply satisfying. It was not about proving who was stronger or taller, but about building life together with trust, respect, and patience. As their bond deepened, she felt a sense of liberation she had never known. For years, she had defined herself by the belief that no man could handle her, that her size and strength made her untouchable and unapproachable. Now she saw that the true challenge had not been finding someone who could physically match her, but finding someone whose heart and character aligned with hers. The cowboy had shown her that the right person could meet her strength without fear, could honor her spirit without trying to change her, and could walk beside her as an equal in every sense. Through these experiences, the woman began to understand the meaning of partnership in a way she had never imagined. It was not about dominance or submission, not about size or appearance, but about integrity, empathy, and respect. The cowboy's presence became a living example of these values. He never forced her to conform, never demanded recognition, and never shied away from challenges. Instead, he modeled patience, understanding, and quiet courage. And in witnessing this, she realized that love, the kind that could endure and thrive, required exactly these qualities. By the end of the year, the woman had transformed not only her perception of love, but also her perception of herself. She had always been proud of her strength, her height, and her independence, but now she understood that true power also included the ability to trust, to hope, and to allow someone to walk beside her. She saw that her earlier belief, that no man could handle a woman her size, was not a limitation but a lesson. It was a lesson that true partnership was rare but possible. And for the first time, she felt confident that the right person might already be by her side, quietly proving, day by day, that love could meet her where she was, in all her strength and beauty. Their story became an example for the community. People began to notice the subtle changes in the woman, her laughter, her confidence, and the calm joy she exhibited. They saw how the cowboy treated her with respect, patience, and understanding, and slowly, the whispers of doubt transformed into quiet admiration. The woman realized that their connection was not about impressing others, but about living a life together that honored both of them fully. And in this realization, she felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the journey she had waited for so long had finally begun, quietly and steadily, in the presence of someone who truly understood her. The seasons continued to pass, bringing changes to the land, to the town, and to the lives of the tall Apache woman and the quiet cowboy. Their bond had grown stronger with every day, every shared task, and every quiet conversation. Life was not always easy. There were still challenges, moments of doubt, and occasional criticism from outsiders. But they faced everything together, not with words or arguments, but with steady actions, patience, and understanding. The woman began to realize that the love she had once thought impossible was unfolding quietly, slowly, but unmistakably, right in front of her. For years, she had carried the weight of expectation, her own expectations, the expectations of her family, and the judgments of others. She had believed that no man could handle her size, her strength, or her spirit. But now, standing beside the cowboy, she understood that true strength was not about domination or control. It was about support, consistency, and the courage to remain patient and kind even when the world was harsh. She watched him every day, noticing how he never tried to change her, never expected her to shrink or hide, and never allowed fear or gossip to influence his care. Through his example, she began to see what true love and partnership could really be. There were moments that made her heart race, not out of fear, but out of wonder. One afternoon, while working in the fields, she struggled with a particularly heavy load of firewood. Normally, she would have carried it alone, as she always did. But he stepped beside her, silently lifting part of the weight without a word. She glanced at him, expecting to see pride or showmanship, but saw only calm determination and care. In that simple act, she realized something profound. Love was not about trying to handle her in the way others expected. It was about standing beside her, sharing burdens, and making life easier without diminishing her strength. Their days were filled with small rituals that became the heart of their relationship. They shared morning walks, cooked meals together, repaired fences, and worked in the fields. They laughed over small jokes, exchanged stories about their pasts, and celebrated each small victory of daily life. These moments were not extraordinary in appearance, but they were extraordinary in meaning. Each shared glance, each gentle word, and each act of support reinforced the bond between them. The woman began to understand that this quiet consistency was far more powerful than the dramatic displays of affection or grand gestures she had once thought necessary. She also began to notice the ways the cowboy handled challenges with patience and integrity. When storms damaged their homestead, he worked tirelessly, never complaining, never seeking recognition. When neighbors doubted or criticized, he remained calm, never allowing the opinions of others to influence how he treated her. Through his actions, he taught her that strength and love were not loud or showy. They were quiet, reliable, and enduring. And in seeing this, she began to feel something she had not felt for a long time: security. For the first time, she trusted that someone could be with her not out of fear, obligation, or curiosity, but out of genuine respect and care. The woman found herself reflecting on her past with a new perspective. She remembered the many men who had tried and failed to connect with her. She recalled the awkward attempts, the fear, and the shallow admiration that never led to real understanding. But she also realized that these experiences had prepared her for this moment. They had shown her what she did not need, what she could do without, and what true partnership really required. The cowboy was different from anyone she had known. He did not see her size as a challenge or a problem. He saw her as a whole person, deserving of respect, trust, and love. As their bond deepened, she began to allow herself to hope. Hope had been a fragile, almost forgotten feeling in her life. She had learned to protect her heart, to be proud of herself, and to live independently. But hope was something different. It was a quiet spark that grew stronger with every shared smile, every kind word, and every act of steady support. She began to believe that love was possible, not as a challenge to her strength, but as a partnership that honored both their hearts and spirits equally. One evening, while sitting by the river as the sun set, she spoke aloud a thought she had never shared with anyone. "I always believed no man could handle me," she said softly, almost to herself. The cowboy looked at her, his calm eyes reflecting the colors of the sky, and replied gently, "I don't need to handle you. I just need to stand with you." Those words, simple as they were, touched her deeply. They carried more meaning than any declaration or gift could. He was not trying to change her, control her, or prove anything. He was offering steady companionship, understanding, and trust, the very things she had longed for her entire life. From that day forward, the woman noticed how much their partnership had grown. It was not about her height, her strength, or her size. It was about the connection they shared, the trust they built, and the quiet joy of being with someone who saw her completely and accepted her without reservation. She laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and felt lighter in spirit than she had in years. The walls she had built to protect herself from disappointment slowly fell, replaced by confidence, trust, and a growing love that felt as natural as breathing. Their story began to inspire others in the community, though it was never intended to do so. People noticed the way he treated her with respect, how he supported her without trying to control her, and how their partnership seemed to strengthen both of them. Some whispered with curiosity, others with admiration, and a few even expressed surprise that someone could meet her heart so perfectly. But for the woman and the cowboy, the opinions of others mattered little. They had discovered something far more important: a bond built on trust, understanding, and genuine care that would endure any challenge. As the years passed, their life together became a testament to patience, respect, and quiet love. They faced hardships, storms that threatened their crops, long days of labor, and occasional difficulties in the town, but they faced them together. They learned to rely on each other not because they had to, but because they chose to. Every shared moment, from the simplest chore to the most profound conversation, strengthened their connection and proved that love could thrive even in unexpected places and between unlikely people. The woman reflected on how much she had changed since the quiet cowboy arrived. She had spent a lifetime believing that no man could handle her, that her size and strength were barriers to love. But now she understood that the true barrier had never been her size. It had been the lack of someone who could meet her heart with patience, understanding, and respect. The cowboy had shown her that the right person could walk beside her without fear, support her without trying to dominate, and love her for exactly who she was. In this realization, she felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. They shared many small victories over the years. Together, they repaired homes, planted gardens, and built a life that honored both of their strengths. They celebrated accomplishments quietly without fanfare, yet each one felt meaningful and significant. She realized that love did not need to be dramatic or public to be real. It could exist in the quiet moments of shared labor, in the gentle words of encouragement, and in the steady presence of someone who truly cared. And in these small victories, she found joy, trust, and a sense of belonging she had never known before. Even the town began to see the transformation. People who had once whispered or doubted began to recognize the strength and depth of their partnership. They saw a woman who was proud, confident, and unafraid to be herself, standing beside a man who was patient, kind, and steadfast. Together, they became an example of how love, respect, and understanding could overcome fear, judgment, and doubt. But for the woman and the cowboy, this recognition was secondary. What mattered most was the bond they had created and the happiness they had found in each other's presence. There were still quiet moments of reflection. Sometimes the woman would sit by the river and think about the life she had imagined long ago, the life she had thought impossible because of her size. She realized that her earlier belief, that no man could handle a woman her size, was not entirely wrong, but it was incomplete. It had been true only for those who judged by appearances, who feared strength, and who lacked patience and understanding. The cowboy had proven her wrong not by trying to prove anything, but by simply being himself, consistently and patiently, day after day. In the end, she understood that the man who could handle her was not one who tried to dominate, impress, or control, but one who could walk beside her, share her burdens, and honor her strength. Their love was not loud, dramatic, or flashy. It was quiet, steady, and enduring, a love built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. And in that love, the tall Apache woman found fulfillment, joy, and a sense of belonging she had long thought impossible. As the sun set on another day, the woman and the cowboy sat together, watching the sky change colors. She leaned slightly against him, feeling the calm steadiness of his presence, and for the first time in her life, she felt completely safe and understood. She knew that life would bring more challenges, but she also knew that they could face them together. She had learned that strength and love were not about size, loudness, or dominance. They were about patience, respect, and the courage to stand beside someone heart to heart. And in that knowledge, she felt a deep sense of peace, contentment, and gratitude. The story of the tall Apache woman and the quiet cowboy became one not of legend, but of truth. It was a story of resilience, trust, and love that defied expectations. It was proof that the man who could truly handle her was not one who tried to handle her at all, but one who simply chose to stand with her, day after day, through work, laughter, challenges, and quiet moments of connection. And in that choice, they both found a love that was rare, enduring, and profoundly beautiful.